you don't, I'm Ruth Toronto. I'm the Associate Vice President at Menno College here. I've been involved at Menno College since 1999, so I've seen a lot of changes. I'm very, very happy to welcome you here. I'm especially happy to have Ruth and Roy Hastings on behalf of the Friesen family, because this is a such a special event. To finally have a celebration honoring the contribution of her parents, David and Catherine Friesen, and all that they have done for Menno College. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that without David Friesen and Catherine Friesen, Menno College as it is today would not be in very many ways. We've got a beautifully renovated space here. We've got new offices. We've got new classrooms. We've got our student lounge, which we finally got, which was because we were able to purchase the first 2 floors of this building. The drive and vision of David Friesen behind Menno College and Friends of Mennonite Higher Learning was what led to our programs here and our 22 or 23 years of being on the University of Winnipeg campus. So without that vision and without that support, I don't think we'd be here. And I'm very, very happy to welcome you all so that we can honor the Friesen family and Ruth and Roy Hastings as the representatives of that family. I'd like to first invite George Wisher, past president of Menno College and current Canadian Mennonite University Council chair, to give a brief history of the many contributions of the Friesen family.
I didn't know they had midgets as lecturers here. This thing is kind of old.
That's been great.
No, I can't. I've tried it.
Oh, you tried it?
Thanks, Ruth. Brian and Ruth, it's so good to see you again, as it is to see former board members of MSC, staff members, and friends of MSC. Good to see you all, and I'm seeing you. Let your mind wander back to the 1970s. Think of the Mennonite educational institutions that were in place at that time. We had secondary schools, and we had Bible colleges. Who were the visionaries behind them? Well, they were probably mostly the church leaders. But there was someone who had a vision for a continuity in Mennonite educational institutions, and what was missing was the elementary and the university level, the liberal arts. And who do you think would have this vision? Church leaders, parents, constituents? It just so happened that this was a family who ran a very successful business who developed this vision, and that was the Friesen family. And this day is about paying tribute to the family. Mrs. Friesen was more focused on the elementary, while Dr. Friesen's interests were in higher education. And it was Mrs. Friesen's initiative that began the Winnipeg elementary schools, as well as the Menno School in Calgary. And these institutions are successful by whatever measure you want to use. The family had a vision for the continuous education institutions. Starting in elementary school was rather simple in trying to persuade the 2 Bible colleges to merge into a university and develop the broader program, which would include the traditional theology and music. The family saw this as important, this type of continuity as important to the Mennonite faith and heritage. And this was important to David and Catherine Friesen. So how did Dr. Friesen begin? He got people together who shared such a vision. The group was called the Friends of Higher Learning, and was formed, I think, somewhere around the late 70s or early 80s. The late Dr. Frank Epp, a member of the group, penned a paper called A New College for a New Century. And that paper is still floating around somewhere. I don't have a copy, but it is somewhere. And that was a dream of a Mennonite university. A merger of the Canadian Mennonite College and the Mennonite Brethren Bible College. And it should be noted that the Friends were a group of interested people drawn from those two major conferences. And pictures of those groups through the years hangs in the hallway on the north campus of CMU. While George Yap, then president of CMBC, was supportive of Dr. Friesen and the Friends concept, neither the boards or faculties of the Bible colleges were ready for such a move. Enrollments were high and conference support was good. As a result of a 1983 Educational Commission of the Conference of Mennonites in Canada, Dr. Friesen and colleagues explored the possibility of an affiliated college with the University of Manitoba. The University of Manitoba was also not ready for such a development. So Dr. Friesen and family had these two setbacks. The colleges weren't ready, the University of Manitoba wasn't ready. But he persisted and found that the University of Winnipeg was open to the concept. And the first stage was the development of a Mennonite Studies Center with Dr. Epp as director. And this center operated for several years with visiting scholars. But it was understood, I believe, right from the beginning, that this center would morph or develop into a Menno Simons College. And Dr. Epp and the U of W spent time discussing just how an affiliated college would function within the U of W. And during this time also, Dr. Friesen appointed a substantial sum of money, $1.5 million, with the Winnipeg Foundation, $150,000 of which would come per annum to the college. Now that goes back to the early 1980s, and we own calculations of about $150,000 a year, and I'm told there's still around $500,000 of that money left. So that 1.5 million that translated into what, close to 30 years of contributions of $150,000. A very significant contribution. And of course, the University of Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Foundation did a real good job in managing the money. Meantime, Dr. Friesen and friends, and the four friends who were involved at this time were Gerhard Lawrence, Frank Epp, A.J. Thiessen, and Henry Radican. Those four, led by Dr. Friesen, managed to get a private member's bill passed by the Manitoba legislature, creating Menno Simons College. It's the Menno Simons College Act, and Menno Simons had the power to grant degrees. So, while Dr. Epp worked closely with Dr. Friesen on developing the center as well as the college and getting this act through, Dr. Epp developed a program for Menno Simons College consisting of two majors, international development and conflict resolution. And again, Dr. Friesen was so delighted by this because it built on two of the theological pillars of Mennonite theology, peace and justice. Further financial support also came from California. The Esau family donated a significant amount of money, which again shows the involvement of the wider Mennonite community. And then, when Menno Simons began functioning in the 90s, and suddenly in the mid-90s, enrollment at both CMBC and MBBC began to drop, and money became tight. And it's interesting that two Mennonite individuals, neither from the Conference of Mennonites in Canada or Mennonite Church, or the Mennonite Brethren, were instrumental in getting discussions going between CMBC and MBBC. Bert Lowen and Ed Racker, two EMC people. They were the ones that brought the people together. And it took a while, but the Friesen family's dream came to fruition. CMU was born in the 1990s. Dr. Friesen, I should say this, Dr. Friesen was chair of the board of MCC for a number of years. He was a businessman. And businesses don't always operate on the same premises as educational institutions. And some of the board members previous board members are smiling because they will understand some of the, shall we say, interesting discussions that we had at that time about how the institutions should operate. Nevertheless, it is a real privilege for me to have a small part in this development. And we are so delighted that the Friesen family, through Ruth and Brian, have continued to make these contributions to Menno Simons and have carried on the vision. The seed planted by the Friesen family in the late 70s has flowered. As MSC is a success, CMU's is a success, and I think about all we can say to the Friesen family is well done.
Thanks, George. George hired me. He actually also taught me my first intro to IBS class. So he got me.
Talked you into taking it instead of auditing it.
Anyway, thank you very much. Now I'd like to call on David Falk, who is our first registered student and alumnus and longtime supporter of Menno Simons College.
Thank you very much, Ruth. It's lovely to be back home. I was asked to spend 3 minutes talking about the significance of the Friesen family, David and Catherine. From an alumni perspective, I get this honor because that is my claim to fame, as I'm the first person ever enrolled at Menno Simons College. So a bit of backstory. 1970s, all this work happening. I was a late brother in a congregation out there that was formative and shaping who I am. And decided to go to the University of Winnipeg and Mennonite Brethren Bible College. My father had gone to Mennonite Brethren Bible College after teaching as an educator for 10 years, packed up his wife and kids and came out here, and actually I was born his last term in '69 while he was at college. And so it's kind of a bit of a homecoming for me to go to college. And I wanted to get a sense of what do I value? How do I make sense of my beliefs and my faith and kind of get a different level of understanding of that, beyond just kind of what you grow up with within the church and Sunday school environment. And I also want to get a sense of how the world works. So I enrolled in sociology over at the University of Winnipeg and tried to figure out what do I do with my understanding of my roots and my heritage and my faith and the way the world is organized. And putting those two things together led me to some interesting places. As kind of a idealist persons can be. I got inspired by Martin Luther King and some liberation theologians and some folks coming out of the Anabaptist roots. I was trying to figure out, what do you do with this stuff? How do you put it into action? Then I had the summer of '89, back on Vancouver Island for a summer job to pay for yet another year to finish off my 3-year college degree and work towards completing my sociology degree. And a little envelope showed up with my parents' name on it, because they were the address for a church plant that they were part of. And this envelope was a University of Winnipeg envelope. And I asked my parents, what's my university sending your little rinky-dinky church plant mail? And they're like, we don't know, we don't want it, you open it. I opened it up, and there was the first calendar ever for Menno Simons College. I flipped through this document, and it was one of these jaw-dropping moments where I'm looking at this going, oh my goodness, this is what I've been trying to do for the last 2 years on my own, trying to figure out what do I care about and how do I make sense of the world and how do I put it into action. And someone's actually gone and done all the legwork to develop a program that helps me do it, that actually says interdisciplinary studies is legitimate. You don't have to be in a sociology course and get booed for daring to offer a psychological point of view, or mocked for daring to say it might have something to do with faith, from a non-sociological perspective of faith, but actually from a faith point of view. And it was just unbelievable. And so I applied. And it has been a pivotal turning point in my life. From being the first student and sitting in Dr. Bernie Weed class with myself and an honors psychology student, Martin Ruppel, who's a PhD now teaching in Saskatchewan. That was my first course. You want to skip class? You better call the prof and say, I'm sick. Because there's no hiding in a class like that. And it was just this formative experience. to the point where it has, for the last 20 plus years, been my life calling in terms of trying to figure out how do I take what I value, my roots, how do I deal with how the world is organized and ways of understanding conflict and put that into practice. Initially as a volunteer with the Menno Central Committee, working in the North End of our city, doing some community education and community intervention work, and now working with businesses and government departments and mom and pop shops to large manufacturing businesses, helping them figure out how to work at addressing conflict constructively so that they can have respectful and resilient and productive workplaces. And so I owe a huge debt of gratitude, having completely blissfully unaware as a new student who's just inspired by a program, completely unaware of the years of behind-the-scenes work that goes into the developing of a new college. I got a little taste of that work as I had 7 years of being on faculty at Menno Simons College right during the era of the coming together, the merger of the colleges. And during that moment, again, what impressed me so much about David Friesen in particular is here's a person who's had that many years of investment, of vision and also financial investment, and yet stayed in the behind-the-scenes workings of the institutions. And from a faculty and from a student's perspective, empowered faculty and students to build and to engage, and did the behind-the-scenes work, structural building work, as opposed to getting into the details of what happens on the ground, which I think is huge for folks who have vision to be able to actually build something and release it and allow the details on the operational side to actually be developed by the people that end up being hired, such as George, to work at the board and then also work with faculty. So thank you. Thank you. It's truly has been my life, and I anticipate will continue to be the trajectory that I'm on as I try to figure out what I value and how the world works and how to put those things into practice. So thank you to your family for helping make that possible.
Now I'd like to ask Dr. John Dirksen, Associate Professor of Conflict Resolution Studies, giving a faculty response from Menno Simons College.
It's interesting, David is the one who phoned me and said, John, would you consider teaching at Menno Simons College? Good afternoon. These words are on behalf of the instructors, even though I didn't ask them what to say. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for founding and supporting Menno Simons College so generously, for many reasons. First reason, after 24 years of school and 10 years with Mennonite Central Committee at Menno Simons College, I finally made real money. I promised to retire before I'm 80. Thank you for founding and supporting Menno Simons College. Second, Menno Simons College is exactly in the right place. It is smack at the intersection of the church and the world, in the middle of a big university, and in the middle of the inner city. 1,000 students of all countries and backgrounds and traditions and colors walk into our classrooms. Menno Simons College is where the action is. Thank you for founding and supporting Menno Simons College. Third, Menno Simons College is doing the right thing. Our programs are conflict resolution studies and international development studies. In one we address conflict, and the other we tackle poverty. These are connected. Whether it's inner conflict or conflict with my neighbor or a conflict between nations, we need healing. And whether our spirit is poor or our stomach is poor or our whole society is poor, we need healing. In the classroom and in our student practicums here and overseas, Menno Simons College tackles both and tackles them together. Time and time again, my students say, I tried my conflict resolution skills with my boyfriend, or at work, or with my family, and they worked. One said, you even saved our marriage. Healing. The world has much brokenness. Menno Simons College tackles the healing question. It's doing the right thing. Thank you for founding and supporting Menno Simons College. And fourth, I love my job, as do my colleagues. With colleagues and students, I get to teach and learn about peace with God, peace with oneself, peace with our neighbor, and peace in the world. How much richer can this get than to engage with bright students, tomorrow's leaders, on the biggest questions of life and build relationships in the process? Thank you for founding and supporting Menno Simons College. Because this college is in the right place and doing the right thing, we have a profound future. As the world's population grows, as climate change develops, as Winnipeg becomes more multicultural, conflict and poverty will be ever more with us, and Menno Simons College will be in the middle of it. These healing gifts of faith, deep thinking, truth-telling, service, creativity, bridge building, peacemaking, these will be ever more relevant. Menno Simons College began only 23 years ago, and already our alumni are offering leadership in schools, universities, mediation centers, refugee centers, farms, businesses, inner cities, governments, and more. As our alumni increase, these seeds of healing will blossom and spread and bear ever more fruit. Here at the intersection of the church and the world, the university and the city, Menno Simons College produces graduates who bring hope and light to a diverse and broken world. What an honor and a joy to serve here. Thank you for founding and supporting Menno Simons College.
Thanks, John, for your beautiful words. I would now ask Dr. Earl Davey, our acting president of Canadian Menno University, to address the panel and present class.
Brian, it's very good to have you here today. I often am asked, what is this relationship between Canadian Mennonite University and Menno Simons College? You have these campuses and they're in different places, and how does all this fit? Well, I think John's done a wonderful job today of describing the work of Menno Simons College. And those educational, those philosophical, those theological values that are at the root of Menno Simons College are at the root of Canadian Mennonite University. I was in a public university for many years, and Brandon University was down the road. So that's my background. And as I've experienced higher education in Canada for the last 35 years, I can say, without equivocation, that higher education in Canada is richer as a consequence of having an Anabaptist university in its mix. I'm grateful for the opportunity and privilege of working at Canadian Mennonite University. And the work that it undertakes is work deeply committed to issues of peace and justice.
I'm very honored, and it's unfortunate that my mother could not come. She is 94 years old, and she's just not strong enough to make the outing. But I'm sure they're both here in spirit. My father and mother's vision over 40 years ago, it has finally come to fruition. Menno Simons College, it has wonderful, strong leadership. It has a healthy student body. It has the affiliation with the Mennonite University and the University of Winnipeg. And it has the its own space, the bricks and mortar. And that was one of my father used to say, we have to have our own building, we have to have our own space, we have to own it, not be a tenant. It's all come to fruition, and they would be very proud. And so on behalf of my mother and father, I'd also like to thank everybody for their support and for making Menno Simons College what it is today. Thank you.
we don't know exactly where we're going to put it, but it's going to be downstairs when you just walk into the building, and we'll figure out the best place for it. So, thank you for that. So thanks all for coming. We do have refreshments coming. If you want to just stay seated just for a couple of minutes, they were a little late in bringing in the refreshments, so they're going to quickly wheel in the refreshments and set them up there. And then just give us a minute, and then we can have some coffee or tea and some dainties, and we can visit and personally thank Ruth and Brian as we're visiting. So thanks a lot for coming.